Well, so TDoS and DDoS, so break it up. A DDoS attack, distributed denial of service. What is it? Classically, a DDoS attack was compromising 500 of grandma's computers and having all of those computers throw data at a website, right? And so what you would get is you would get a lot of little tiny streams of data that all hit at the same time on your web server, or whatever, and it would overload the system. And that works. That works surprisingly well. I mean, grandma has a computer. She has an uplink, whatever that uplink is. Sucks, but I don't care. And grandma has weak defenses, and so I can get grandma to do this. And she probably doesn't even know her system's been compromised and is currently attacking whoever. Okay. So over the years, this has become kind of larger scale. So now I write code, and this code infects 1 million computers. And those 1 million computers all go pound my target. And they pound the target using HTTP, HTTPS, or whatever. Or they do a DNS amplification attack where those 1 million computers go pound some other target and say, hey, I'm the real target. Give me an answer to something. And then the answer comes from yet another direction. Always effective, works. And ultimately, nowadays, what you see are a mixture of volumetric attacks. And the volumetric attack is literally just so much traffic coming in that you get drops. You overwhelm the network capacity of your upstream. You overwhelm your network capacity, and you're toast. I mean, you get so much fragmentation, so much packet drops, so much packet retransmission. You're just done. You can't function on an internet-facing feed. Note that on an internet-facing feed, if your feed didn't face the internet, you can't be targeted. Okay, that's a DDoS attack. Why does this matter? Well, historically, PSAPs have been immune to this. They don't have an internet feed that feeds into call handling, feeds into CAD, feeds into their critical systems. They may have an internet feed on a separate network so that people can cruise the internet during downtime or can go to training or can whatever. But they don't have one on the critical networks. Critical networks are severed from the internet. That's going to change. It's already changing. One of the biggest changes is that as you get more and more encryption in systems, you have more and more of a need to establish a chain of trust. And so a chain of trust to be established needs an internet connection. There is no other way. So because of that, to have a chain of trust to run, say, DNSSEC, which is an I3 standard requirement, to validate that the other person on the internet is who you expect them to be, to reach out in theory and use like a forest guide. It's not here yet, but it's coming. This is now a necessity because otherwise you can't get the chain of trust. Even though the data itself may flow over a private link, may flow over that chain of trust, you've got to go out, hit root, hit VeriSign or whoever you're using for your trust model and come on down. So suddenly you have an internet feed, and not just that, it's a critical internet feed. It needs to be there for you to use your communications correctly. Now suddenly this is real. And so what can you expect? You can expect volumetric attacks. Typically at the same time you're being volumetrically attacked, there are actual real attacks coming in, like buffer overflow attacks or some kind of rat attack. Somebody's trying to get in because you're running around screaming because your system's all chewed up. Maybe that's a good time to try and sneak something in, right? Real common, which means that after a volumetric attack, one of the first things you do is go look around. Like, okay, that's over. Whew, that's great. Did something get in while we were busy? The other way of doing a volumetric attack is hit your upstream. Who's your service provider? That I can take them out. Let's find out. So we've seen DDoSes in the US up to multi-terabit levels, which is croggling. And at that level, obviously, your ISP is significantly impacted. You're completely impacted. And there's really nothing you can do. I've got a firewall. Doesn't matter. Packet loss is happening before it ever gets to you, right? And that's kind of the key to all DOS attacks, is that you're talking about a resource depletion attack. And the first resource that's critically depleted is where the action to mitigate has to happen, right? So think about it in a different way. If you're dealing with a path to function or a river to function, if you will, if it's choked off upstream, you don't get any water. It doesn't matter what you do. Oh, well, we have this wonderful irrigation system. Doesn't matter. You're not getting anything, right? It's got to be addressed where that impact is. And the problem is that the PSAP has no standing to do that. right? If you're a PSAP and you're getting internet service from an internet service provider, that internet service provider goes offline, yeah, you got a firewall. Isn't that great? That really doesn't help you much. So what needs to happen is you need to validate that path of function. You need to have multiple paths to function if possible. You need to take a really good look at how people get to you. And so one of the statements I make with DDoS, which we'll discuss in a minute, is everybody knows your phone number, right? It's not like you can hide. Everybody knows where you are. That's the point. And that means that the attacker is going to come in on that same path. So if you've got 5 ways to get to you, but they all get to the same point, the attacker is simply going to cycle through all 5 and maybe take them off in turn. So this is a deal, if you will. There are ways to deal with this. You can put infiltration systems for smaller attacks. For medium or larger attacks, you can actually take this and redirect this traffic over to a scrubbing center that can handle multi-terabit attacks and then direct it back to you. There are ways to address DDoS attacks. We don't see a lot of them yet. You certainly see them in the wild in other industries. We haven't seen a lot of them in PSAPs. PSAPs are just starting to get to where internet service feeds are truly required, and they're just starting to open that up. We will expect to see more of them in the future.